Hi, I'm Mike Glenn, and I am the president of the Engaged Church Network, and we are glad to welcome you to today's podcast. With me today is my friend Linc Taylor. Linc and I served at Brentwood Baptist Church on their staff together for 18,
I was
19,
there 18
20.
plus years.
Yeah.
Or I have still there.
Yes,
But
you're still there. You're still there. I, on the other hand, have moved on to the Engaged Church Network. Linc was a student minister and now is the, what's your official title? Family minister?
Next Gen
X,
family
Next
minister.
Gen?
Yeah.
They keep kind of
All things family.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
kind of keep promoting him depending on the needs and the opportunities that we have there. But we have found that when you're trying to reach youth or children, that you are kind of defeating yourself if you don't have the emphasis to reach the family. Now,
Right.
I'm older than you are, and I can remember when the conventional wisdom was if you reach the student, then you can reach the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had elaborate youth ministries, mission tours, choir tours, trips to the beach and all that to get the kid to come. So hopefully the parents would come along. Same thing with the children. If you have the children want to come to church, then mom and dad will show up. That was, just let me say, limited success. I won't say a total failure
Sure, yeah.
or unsuccessful,
Yeah,
but
there were
it
some
had
wins
limit-
in that. But
yeah.
yeah.
But not enough to justify the huge cost of personnel and expense that churches went through to try to have those kind of youth ministries. Now, you have been one of the leaders of this thought transition in churches about how we reach the whole family and how we focus on the whole family and how even as student ministers, we have our obligation to disciple the parents as well as the students. And you were on the front edge of that for a long time. So tell me about how all that changed for you and what you learned.
Yeah, so I was in student ministry for about 20 years, and so I've kind of been through a couple of eras in the sense of the philosophy of student ministry, and always knew the parents were an important part of that. But when I started, I was one of the ones who kind of just moved on and just ministered to students.
Right.
I thought of the parents. I would send a parent email every so often, or not an email back then, more a letter, but would communicate with them somewhat. But it was just student ministry was to minister to the students, and so this movement was slow. But there were moments when I began to realize, no, we have got to impact and to encourage, inspire, equip, parents to engage with their kids. And the uniqueness of the church, the reality of the church and the purpose of the church, but also the uniqueness and purpose of family and God's design of both. So it was a long process, but it was around 2010. I'd probably been on Brentwood staff for about 3 years, maybe 2009, that I really in earnest began to think through, okay, how do we best equip and engage? There was a mindset and a heart change to do it. It was not the easy. There were very little.
Well, it was a whole paradigm shift.
Well,
The systems had to be torn down
complete
and rebuilt.
paradigm shift. Yeah.
Right.
So you still minister to the children and students, but how do you best truly equip parents? What does that even mean? Mm-hmm. And so, do we just have, do we do more elaborate, parent emails or parent, newsletters, or like what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. And so as we began and more the discussion began to happen, began to see some things kind of begin to play out, and how do we best inspire, but also recognize the barriers, especially for me, began to recognize all these barriers that I was being confronted with, not only just with workers and just how we do programming, because workers have always done the same thing.
Right.
But how do you now engage parents who grew up in a church where it was disconnected?
I bring my kid to church for their religious
drop
training.
them off, right? Yeah, drop them off, and then we all get back in the car and we go on, and we kind of left God at the church. We've done our sacred thing, and now we get back into the secular, and then we'll pick it up back next week. And so that began, and a lot of us, and that was not just me. There were a lot of people that began to think through how do we how do we truly move forward with that? Right. Instead of just a want to and just this hope that we would do it, but how do we best do that?
Okay, now this brings up an interesting question about leadership that transcends just one aspect of church, like student work. You're having to look at a system that, however you judge it, or whatever its failures are, at one time was considered successful.
Yeah.
Now it has run out of gas or no longer meets the needs. So now you have to scrape it down to the foundation. Why do we do what we do?
Right.
What motivates us? So talk about some of that transition, because this is no matter what you're facing in your local church, this is some of the kind of work you have to do.
And that's the hard work. When you ask the question, you come to a point. If you can ask the question internally, but are you able to ask the question with some other staff and leadership? Is why do we do what we do, and what are the markers of success? Like, are we getting the markers of success from culture? Are we getting it from Scripture? Like, where are we gaining if we're being successful? How do we best do that? And so, I mean, literally, what we began to do at Brentwood 15 years ago is we literally, in a sense, pushed everything off that we do in student ministry, and now nothing exists. So now let's build back to something that really meets the needs of kids and is biblical and is bringing parents and leaders into the equation.
Right.
So how do we best do that? And so that was a unique, simple question, but began to really be powerful. And that's really for any ministry in the church.
Right.
Why do we do what we do when it comes to groups, worship, guest services, decor, choir, robes?
Yeah.
I mean, you just go down the list. Why do we do what we do? And what we began to realize is there were some good enough things, but as we know, good enough sometimes is the biggest threat to greatness or really being who we need to be. And so we began to realize, there's tradition that has spoken into it over the past. And I think a lot of our churches and a lot of our pastors listening or leadership, if you really look at, we do things because we've always done it. And if we adjust, we just keep piling on the things that we've always done, and we just keep tacking on new elements of that instead of just truly reformatting a programming or any type of thing that would make up the church. And
now, some of the opposition is honest in that this moment has significance for me when I was a student, and I want my child to have that.
It's the known and familiar. Right. Yes, I have memories tied to that. Mm-hmm. And this, if it worked for me,
it ought to work for them.
I actually heard those phrases. I heard those phrases. I've heard some previous churches, Linc, we can't do that. We're a small church. Mm-hmm. Even early on when I tried to do kind of different stuff. Or, why do we need to do that? We've always done it this way. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times I heard that. Did not hear that at Brentwood because of our thinking. I think your leadership, too, is how do we do things differently? How do we become truly innovative to really move forward? And so, but that was big when we looked at really what is tradition speaking into it. It's not all bad.
No, not at all.
In fact, there's some really good things. We need to kind of continue doing that. But what we're really talking about is methodologies. Mm-hmm. Like, what is our methodology? When you think of the church, you're thinking of programming, you're thinking of those things outside of just the biblical truths we want to share. That's not what we're talking about, more or less. We're talking about the methodology, the tactics that we do. But also theology speaks into it. Do we know the roots of why we do groups or why we do evangelism, why we do missions, why we gather, and then because of theology, we began to realize Deuteronomy 6:4-7 was truly about we need parents are the ones that need to be impressing truths upon their kids. Mm-hmm. So if they are, then what do we do about that?
And in the church, we can't undo in a couple of hours a week what parents do 24/7.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that right there to the point is I began to realize in a whole new, a fresh way. I've always been aware of that, but all of a sudden just the light bulb began to come on. But also the wrestling of that began to come on because it's the harder thing to do. It's easier just to continue doing what we're doing. And I hope everybody listening understands that. One of some of the biggest barriers is the cost of turning the table and bringing in a new paradigm when it comes to, especially we are going to now equip parents who have truly abdicated kind of their role because they let the church train, spiritually. They let the ball, the coaches
well,
do
everybody
sports.
has professionals
School
now.
does, right. And
the school teachers are professional.
Yep.
Ball
Everything's
coaches are
been
professional.
given out.
The guys at church are the religious professional.
So how do we, not only those families that are midstream who have kids that are middle school, high school, but now in my role now is I begin to look back all the way when families truly all of a sudden have that first child.
Right.
How do you now create the new trajectory, this new day of the design of family and all the messiness of the world, and all of a sudden, and still understanding the importance of church, we're still going to have age-graded programming because there are some movements that have kind of moved away from age-graded ministries. Right. Well, we still go strong with that, but at the same time, we're bringing parents into the equation. We're letting them understand, their role. Like if we have a camp, we're letting parents know what we talked about and how to have conversations with them about what we talked about at camp.
Right.
Or a mission trip, or how to have a debrief when they get back from a mission trip, because sometimes that's the biggest collisions I begin to see in the student ministry. A student goes away on a mission trip and gets close to God, is powerful. The parents just are staying home working.
Right.
All of a sudden they get off the bus and there's this collision, but how do you help that?
Jesus told the parable about throwing the seeds, and some seeds grow up among weeds.
Right.
And a lot of times you can do some great discipleship work, transformative work in the life of a student, but they go to the same home where that transformation in Christ is not being reinforced,
right,
not being encouraged, and in some ways actively hindered because the family doesn't support the journey of this child.
And I think that's the importance of leaders, volunteer leaders that can help out with that. But it's also, we've got to be careful that student ministries, children's ministries, any of those aren't separate entities. They're a part of church. At Brentwood Baptist Church, the kids ministry, student ministry, they're a part of the church. They're not a separate entity that's circling around the church. And I think there's a lot of churches that it does that.
Right.
And here's a key moment we begin to have is we begin to look at wants and needs of kids, wants and needs of families. And if you look at wants would be those things that are desires that are near the surface, that are always on the mind of a student or a parent, whatever it be. It'd be, food, entertainment, and especially when it comes
League education. I want my kid to
education, which leads to career,
or
which
to
leads
get a
to
scholarship,
lifestyle. Right. And so the trajectory is that, and those are wants. Needs are the deeper longings of the soul and of the heart. The need to be loved, the need to be known, the need for significance, the need for purpose, need for salvation. Need to be a part of something.
Give you the blessing.
Yeah,
this is who you are. And
exactly, identity. All those. Now, some of those can be the same when you talk about a kid wants a relationship. Well, belonging is a need. So there's some similarities. But if you look at an iceberg, that's been used so many times. But iceberg, what you see above is your wants. What's below the water is your needs. They're kind of out of sight.
Right.
They're just as real, but they're not seen. And I think a lot of times churches approach methods because they always hear the wants from people because they're right there.
Right.
And so we key in on that. And I think that's been very evident in student ministry, children's ministries. It's not bad if we just do it every so often for fun and that kind of thing. But the purpose is to go deeper with the needs, because that's where greater change, that's where greater
and more sustained
work,
change.
That's where work happens.
Right,
is the deeper things of a child and of a family. And so, parents, if they truly don't understand the design of family, they're just constantly trying to meet the wants, and they're trying to survive, and they're also trying to build a lifestyle and career. And so they're kind of off kilter. And then they come to church, they do the church thing, and if you want to call it that, they check the box, and then they get back into Monday, and here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. The conversation that I was always having was, I'm working 50 hours a week. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I've got all of this. And now you're telling me I have to be the religious teacher of my children.
I don't have time.
I'm not trained.
I'm not spiritual like those people, whoever they are. I mean, those are the barriers. I feel inadequate. But I'm not going to tell you I feel inadequate, because we got some dads that are CEOs and are run businesses. But to tell me, for me to tell you I feel inadequate, I'm not going to do it.
No.
And so those are huge barriers that they are probably not going to tell us, but we've got to know that they're there. Or they feel unqualified.
Right.
Maybe they've messed up, they come from a broken family, whatever it is these barriers that are obstacles to why they do what they, of what they need to be about. And so I think we as a church need to understand the reality of that.
Right.
Encourage, we're there with you, we want to resource you, but perfection, no. We want to be grace, mercy, and understand when we do mess up, what an opportunity for forgiveness and restoration to be on display.
Right.
And so everything's a teachable moment.
Right.
And
So, when we first started talking about this a long time ago, we found out that the church, our church in particular, was one of the most anti-family organizations in town. And when we looked at it, we looked at our calendar.
Before I got there.
We had parents here one night.
Yeah.
We had children here another night. We had students here another night.
Oh, yeah.
So when did you want your parents to be at home with their children doing this? Because you were always expecting them to come to church, and that's where the religious instruction happened.
Yeah.
What I used to remind people of is especially parents, is you are the spiritual leader of your children, whether you want it or not.
Right. Exactly.
You don't have.
You're leading them in something.
You don't get that choice.
No. Your influence. You're influencing in something. Mm-hmm. You can't escape that.
That's right.
Nor do you want to. Now, it may terrify us a little bit, because we realize when we have these wake-up calls, we understand parents are feeling shame, feeling guilty, I've missed it, or whatever it is. But you start where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. But yeah, exactly. That's that's a big point. But yeah, the tension of over-programming and doing the basics, but providing experiences for families. So what we're trying to do now at Brentwood is do more family experiences.
The family mission trip.
Because adventure and experiences are enormous. People want to be a part of that. They don't know how to do it. But how do we best do that? And then from that family mission trip, being parents and kids serving together, having this experience together.
And the shared stories. The
shared stories and shared experiences are enormous. Mm-hmm. And to be a part of something that's significant.
Yeah.
And to do something that when they come back, it's building a new framework of family identity.
Right.
And that's enormous. It's not something you can teach on a Wednesday night class. Mm-mm. Let's live it and learn them. Teach them how to have.
Any time there's something about going on a mission trip that gives you freedom to get out of patterns and to break rules. So the kids get to see their dad in a different role. Mm-hmm. The student gets to step into a moment of leadership or something that nobody thought they had in them because of the circumstances.
Well, it's a shared calling, it's a shared experience, and it's shared risk. So I think a lot of time parents only want to do things, they lead their kids in what they are confident in. When you put them together on a mission trip, everybody's in an arena. Exactly, and they're just trying to figure it out. But that's the beauty of it, is where we try to be risk managers as parents to protect our kids from not seeing us as weak or whatever, or not knowing everything. And what a beautiful beauty to put them out there, and you have these shared risk is what it is. And then you have conversations about that as a family, which we hope continues on in these extraordinary moments back in the ordinary moments.
In the car ride, sitting around the dinner table.
And those beautiful things is exactly that. It's out of the blue type conversations that may happen. Okay. That there's influence happening.
All right, let me give you a chance here to prove to everybody how smart you are, because you've been doing this a long time. I mean, when you came to Brentwood, my kids were still
involved.
Had
just gotten out.
Yeah,
they just gotten out. Yeah.
And now they're 40. So, and you're now a grandparent of three beautiful grandbabies, and
that's right.
Yeah. Nothing better, just nothing better.
Changes everything, doesn't it, Mike?
Okay, what's changed in the generations. I mean, we throw around X, Y, Z, double A, alpha, whatever. Is that change real? When wants, needs?
Okay, that's a great question, because what I've keyed on is the millennial, which is 81 to 97 or 96, something like that. So they're the parents right now. They're the age 27 to 43, roughly, something like that, 26 to 43. That's what I'm keyed on. Is it's like, what are the passions of if there is a generation? Now, I'll get to that in just a minute, but I think the markers for that is they're passionate about their values, and they're going to shout it from the mountaintop, and they're going to be involved in advocacy for that. They want connectivity. It may not be this, but it's going to be online, and they're kind of the first generation that began to be in conversations online, not face to face. There's I think a big one is the and we talked about that, the experience and adventure. They want to be a part of something, whether it's just a product that they could wear or they could buy. It's a part of something bigger, and so they like that. So if you look at those things in wants and needs when it comes to generations, if that truly is these deeper longings of these millennials, if those are some of the ones that are bubbling up, there are always deeper needs that are common to every person. Right. Wants are always going to change. They're always the newest thing, whatever my friends have or whatever the neighbor has or whatever let's say those are wants. The deeper needs are never going to change. Like when Joel, my wife and I, Joellen, have traveled several countries and have done marriage enrichment and done things, and there are common. The needs, like I talked about earlier, are common to every person, no matter where they are in the world. They're just common.
They're core things that makes us human.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's where we got to be focused. Now, when it comes to generations, let's be aware of that, because I think that's some things that we can be aware of, that we can address at first, but it's always not the last need to be met. The needs are those deeper needs that we talked about. That's where we got to focus on. Right. I think the generational qualities or characteristic, let's absolutely be familiar with those. A lot of those are probably more technology, maybe driven through the years.
Style things.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
substantial things.
Right. Yeah. And I think, yes, let's be aware of it. But I think if we're not careful, we can't spend way too much time on that. Let's be aware of it, but let's always focus on the needs. And I think that's what we as a church need to always be driven back to, the need for salvation, because everything cascades off our relationship with the Lord.
Right.
But how do you tap in if a millennial wants something, they have a true value? And what I have learned, we don't just do what we believe, we do what we value. Mm-hmm. We can believe a lot of things, but we don't do it. Mm-hmm. If we do something, it's a value. We value it. So let's tap into those to this generation of parents of what are they valuing? They value kindness, they value respect, whether it's right or wrong or not. Mm-hmm. Are you being kind with it? Mm-hmm. And I think we're wrestling with some issues right now as a church about we've got to come as we need to make biblical stances, but we also need to be kind. Let's have that let's have compassion as our first response, right, undergirded by Scripture. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what we need. That's one indicator of that. So yeah.
Now again, let's give you a chance to prove how smart you are. You've just written your first book.
Just finished it about 6 weeks ago. And it's a
the
book
title of that book is?
It's called The Mystery of the Ordinary: 8 Statements Your Kids Need to Hear and Why. And so my heart is to write. I'm trying to reach dads. I think 95% of all Christian living books are bought by moms and wives. So I know they're going to read it. I hope they read it. But I want the dads. I want the fathers to see it. And so it speaks. What I want to do is inspire them to understand the ordinary moments of home, which is relationships, the power of relationships, the power of words spoken, but it's undergirded by a strong relationship. Right. It's undergirded by, let's say, a dad speaking powerful words, understanding the needs and the power of those words that address that need. But it's the backdrop of a healthy relationship is the game changer.
Right.
I mean, through the years, I've had parents come up to me and say, I'm having issues with my child or a kid. And second question I ask them, first one is, tell me about the relationship with the Lord. The second question is, tell me about your relationship, because that's where I take the conversation after that. So in the book, I spend a lot of time talking about the depth of the relationship, the importance of the relationship. I talk about wants and needs, and then I talk about I talk about barriers a lot. Some of the things I've talked about here today is, let's talk about the barriers that are stopping you, and then let's talk about the deeper needs, and then the power of our words that speak into that. I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can, but also understanding the power of the ordinary days. There's a lot of great stuff written for devotions, for milestones, for family worship. I mean, you just go down with it. But I think that probably makes up about 7 to 8% of all that family life is.
Well, yeah.
So what are you going to do about the other 90%?
I learned to love Scripture from watching my dad study for his Sunday school lesson.
Yeah.
And that happened every week.
Absolutely.
Without
And you just
fail.
happened to see it.
And I happened to see it.
Kind of in the margins. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And it wasn't something he was doing for me to watch.
Yeah.
It was something he did that I got to see.
Absolutely.
And that's where I learned to love Scripture.
And so that's where it's your dad was influencing you in a way he probably wasn't even aware of. He may have been, but not the full weight of it. And so, that's what I want families to understand is living in the ordinary. How do we not just script out? You can't script out for 100% of family life, but you can give some big themes to it. And so that's my hope in the book. And then also to understand the power of 8 words. Eight statements. You can't just sit down and say the 8 statements on a Monday night and then, okay, everybody good, and then leave. But how do you weave that into the fabric of the home and of the relationship?
And of the values that your family has.
Absolutely. And so
that's... As you said, you do what you value,
That's
right?
the book. That's it. That's exactly it. Yep.
He's Linc Taylor. He serves on the staff of Brentwood Baptist Church as the Gen X minister, and he's also written a new book called
The Mystery of the Ordinary. 8 statements your kids need to hear and why.
It'll be available soon.
Yep.
We're glad you have joined us here today. I'm Mike Glenn, and this is the podcast for the Engaged Church Network.